topic that we've been following for months here on Celtics Today by Chat Sports is what is going to happen to Lonnie Walker. We know that he signed an Exhibit 10, which pretty much allows him to have this tryout process throughout the preseason, but the preseason ended yesterday for the Boston Celtics. They're now 6 days away from taking on the New York Knicks and starting their basketball season. And after Lonnie Walker didn't play in the final preseason game, I'm going to break down if Lonnie Walker is going to make this team. And if he isn't, there might be one surprise candidate that could actually swoop in and take that 15th and final roster spot. But did you guys hear me correctly? We are 6 days away from the Boston Celtics starting the 2024-25 NBA season. Somebody asked me today, Allie, what's your NBA hot take for the season? I'm like, number one, this isn't a hot take. This is a fact. The Boston Celtics will go back-to-back. And if you guys think so as well, spam your shams in the comment section as many times as you possibly can to let people know the Celtics are back. So there was an interesting update that came out today is that the Boston Celtics and Brad Stevens have until 5 p.m. on Saturday, I assume Eastern time, to make a Lonnie Walker decision. Now, this decision is either to allow him to go play for Maine, and he will get $75,000 of guaranteed money just because he signed that E10 contract. Lonnie Walker already said he is not above playing in the G League, primarily because his free agency didn't go really as expected. But they also may just waive him entirely or sign him to the final roster spot for the Boston Celtics. And let me tell you why I don't think he's going to be on the Boston Celtics roster. Let's break down what he did in the preseason. Number one, he did not play all 5 games. He actually didn't even play the 5th game in Toronto against the Raptors when they lost by 1. He averaged 7.3 points per game. The assists and rebounds were kind of where we saw Lonnie Walker's production with the Nets. But here is where it really struggled. Lonnie Walker is known for being a dominant offensive player, but he only shot 43% from the field and 31% from downtown. Not to mention, Lonnie Walker took a lot of shots to get that percentage. So when he does come into play, he's not just going to plug and play and can score off the dribble, can score just automatically like a Sam Hauser, like a Peyton Pritchard. And that's why I think Lonnie Walker was listed as a did not participate in Game 5. Is because maybe Joe Mazzulla has kind of already seen everything that he needs to see from Lonnie Walker coming off the bench. And that's when I started to kind of wrap my head around this, knowing that, look, I know we've been talking about Lonnie Walker as if he's going to be in the starting lineup, right? Because this is the biggest news of the Celtics offseason. But in reality, he's going to be the 15th guy on the roster, if that. And if we don't end up signing him, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's not like this is make or break for the Boston Celtics roster if Lonnie Walker is not in a Celtics uniform this year. Because he was also in competition with even playing time if he was going to be in Boston, primarily at that wing position. Because we know they drafted Baylor Shireman. They still have Jaden Springer, who they picked up by the trade deadline last year. They have the second-year player Jordan Walsh, who's trying to find his footing in the NBA. And then they have somebody like Drew Peterson, a two-way player that we know Brad Stevens and Joe Mazzulla really liked using the two-way player of Neemias Queta as they ended up signing him to a standard contract in April just so he could play in the NBA playoffs. So they might want to look to something like that with Peterson as well. But when it comes to Lonnie Walker, who's fighting for playing time, if he even does make this roster, I just don't see it in the future for it to work out financially, but also for Lonnie Walker's playing style to fit in with the Celtics. Remember how I said that I think Lonnie Walker needs a little bit of time to get his rhythm, to find his momentum on offense? That's not going to come with Boston. He's going to be getting probably about 10 minutes per game, and in Boston's type of substitution or rotations, you need to come in and do one thing. Prevent the team from scoring and put up buckets. Because the last thing Joe Mazzulla wants is to put in a reserve player, and he comes in and makes the lead, diminishes the lead, or can't help the Boston Celtics gain their points back if they're in a deficit. That's what Joe Mazzulla is really looking at, and Lonnie Walker may not fit that mold. But that's just my opinion from what I saw in the preseason. Lonnie Walker is a great basketball player, and I do think he has some attributes that could mesh in well with the Boston Celtics roster, but when you're looking for a final roster spot, it may just not be the answer. That's okay. But do you guys think Walker should make the roster? Type Y for yes, type in for no. This will be the pinned comment on today's show, so go on ahead and hit that, comment that for me. And then next, I'm going to tell you guys the number one reason why I don't think Lonnie Walker is going to make the roster, and it actually has nothing to do with his abilities at all. And then I'm going to break down who I actually think could be a surprise candidate for the 15th roster spot. But before I hop into any of that, you guys know what I'm about to say. I'm about to tell you to download Prize Picks, the number one daily fantasy sports app in America. I play this, honestly, more than I probably should, but it's just so much fun. And when I tell you what, when I've won over 25 entries and over $1,000 playing this myself, that's why I want to tell everybody about it. So I'm just going to tell you a few reasons why I love playing Prize Picks. Number one, it's super easy. All you have to do is pick more or less on a player's projected stats, and you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. Truly, that's all you have to do. Not to mention the fact that you guys can play Prize Picks in over 30 states, including Georgia, California, Texas. There are several reasons why, but I also love the promotions that they do also allow us to play with. So if you guys are looking for a harder time testing your skills, well, they do have the Demon Picks, right? Which is a harder pick, but it pays out a lot more. Or the Goblin pick. It's a little green goblin next to your picks there where it's an easier pick, but it doesn't pay as much. But they also do like to give you guys great discounts when a season is upcoming. And not even that, just for when a game is about to start. As you guys can see, Anthony Edwards to have at least 1 point on opening night. Come on, man. It's Ant. What are we talking about here? Obviously, that's an easy go-to win. And then Jaylen Brown against the New York Knicks, I have him having more than 23.5 points, and Jalen Brunson to have less than 27.5 points in their NBA debut. Now, look, I like to go more a lot, but when it comes to New York Knicks, I'm always taking the less because I don't think they can uphold the Boston Celtics. So if you guys want a easy lock, an easy win, go on ahead and get the Anthony Edwards 1 point equals 1 win on opening night. So if you guys want to go on ahead and get started, download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Why won't Lonnie Walker make the roster? It's all because of money. The Boston Celtics do not have any to spare. In fact, they owe a lot. And why do you ask? Well, look at our roster. We have the 2 highest paid players in the NBA on the same team. You just handed everybody that helped you win a championship an extension. Brad Stevens has no money. And because they are over the limit on how much you can actually spend, they're now facing penalties for it. And you guys know I am absolutely stupid when it comes to numbers, so I'm going to use the socials here to really break it down. That way I don't butcher anything and you guys know what's up. The biggest hurdle by far for Walker making the Celtics is a $10 million tax hit. That's a lot for a 15th player on the roster. Not sure there's much he can do to overcome that. On Boston's end, they'll have to weigh how likely it is another team signs him or whether or not he's the best option. That'll become available for the 15th spot. So you're probably wondering, Allie, Lonnie Walker is not a $10 million player, because I was saying the exact same thing. But because Boston is well over that luxury tax line, everything multiplies pretty much. Keith Smith really broke this down here, saying right now, the Celtics are at a 3.75 tax multiplier for every dollar spent. Keeping Walker would nudge them to the next bracket and put them at a $4.25 tax multiplier for every dollar spent. For Walker, who would be on the vet minimum, which is about a $2 million salary, that turns into an additional $8.8 million tax hit, and that's how you get the $10 million. So you went from a $2.1 million player, which I do think Lonnie Walker is, to nearly $11 million over the luxury tax line. Brad Stevens is not going to do that. Respectfully, I don't think Lonnie Walker is worth that. And it has nothing to do with his abilities, but if we're going to get a man that's worth $11 million, I want a guy that's worth $11 million, not a vet minimum. Especially not when you just are looking for a guy to get at least 10 minutes per game. And especially when Lonnie Walker, and the way that his offense kind of flows, he might not be the best plug-and-play guy just for that purpose. But the Boston Celtics may have another option here, and that's what makes it kind of cool. And he's a lot cheaper, and he's pretty much already on the team. If there's one guy that stood out to me in the NBA preseason, his name is Drew Peterson. And I was completely blown away by what I saw. He was actually the leading scorer. He scored 3 more points than Lonnie Walker did in Game 4 against Toronto Raptors in TD Garden. And he could actually become a very good option to keep him on the 2-way contract and maybe sign him to a guaranteed contract in April, the exact same way they did for Neemias Queta when it came to playoff time if you really need somebody like Peterson. But I was breaking down why I think Peterson would be a good option to bring onto the Boston Celtics roster. And overall, he was a great player for the main Celtics last year. And I know it's G League, but we're talking about a 15th guy. But then he popped off in Summer League. And then he popped off even harder in the preseason, which is making me start to really draw my eyes to his offense and his defense. In 3 games that he played in the preseason, he averaged 13 points a game, nearly 3 boards. Look at the shooting percentage. The 55% from downtown absolutely caught Joe Mazzulla's eyes. 60% from the field as a wing, I will absolutely take that. So why Peterson? Why Peterson over Lonnie Walker? Lonnie Walker is a better player than Peterson. I'm not arguing that at all. But he costs less. He costs little to nothing being on that 2-way contract. And I like the fact that he's a microwave scorer, which means he can score in a short period of time. He's a plug-and-play guy. He's the Pritchard that comes off the bench, and you know he can get you at least 5 points. He's not going to need to take 5 shots to find his rhythm. He can come in and drain it from all 3 levels, by the way. And he doesn't need to be signed until April. You can play him, I believe, in 50 games while he's on a 2-way contract. You just can't play him in the playoffs if he's not on a guaranteed contract. So I think Brad Stevens may have his way with Drew Peterson in keeping him in Maine a little bit, also playing him in Boston, and that would be a lot cheaper and a little bit more of a guaranteed spot than Lonnie Walker. So my final question for you guys here on today's episode is, should the Celtics sign Drew Peterson to the Boston Celtics roster? Keep him on a 2-way, whatever. Should they do that other than Lonnie Walker? Type S for sign, type P for pass. And as always, if anything ever happens with the Boston Celtics, you know I'm going to talk about it right here on Celtics Today by Chat Sports. So all you guys have to do is subscribe.